Hello.
Hey, Olyvya.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Fabulous, fabulous. Good evening, everyone. My name is Olyvya Kells Kelly, and I am so honored to be a part of this prestigious and wonderful event. I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. And the song that I'm going to be singing for you all this evening is titled Open My Heart by Miss Yolanda Adams. It's a song that truly means so much to me, and it has brought me through so many trials and tribulations. And I hope that you all will enjoy it as much as I do. Here goes. Oh, talk to me. Whoa, whoa, please come on and talk to me. I'm alone in this room, and it's just me and you. I feel so lost because I don't know what I'm gonna do. But what if I choose the wrong things to do? You see, I'm so afraid. I'm afraid of disappointing you. So I need to talk to you and ask you for your guidance, especially today when my mind it is so cloudy. Guide me until I'm sure, and I will open up my heart. My hopes and all my dreams, they are fading fast. You can see I'm all burned out, and I don't think my strength is gonna last. So I'm crying out. I'm crying out to you. You're the only one who is able to pull me through. So I know I need to talk to you. I'm standing here and I'm asking you for, especially today, when my mind it's so cloudy. Oh, come on and guide us. Oh, my heart. Oh, yeah. Please come on, Father. Show us how to do things your way. And don't you let me make the same mistakes over and over and over and over. And I want your will to be done, and I will be the one to make sure that it's carried down. 'Cause in you, I don't have any doubt. I'm standing here and I'm asking you for, especially today, when my mind is so cloudy. Oh, come on and guide each and every one of us. Just one word will make a difference in what I do. Let me hear one single word from you. One word one word, one word, one word. Ooh, all you gotta do is guide each and every one of us. Come on, come on, come on. If you keep the faith of a mustard seed, he will open up your heart. One word, 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 one word. He will open up your heart. All you gotta do is keep the faith and remember that he will open up your heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olyvya.
Thank you.
There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Access. Good evening. My name is Barbara Hartley. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Arts District. Welcome to Access, a discussion about being Black in the art world. Thank you for joining us this evening. During the local Black Matter protest in the downtown Orlando, the Downtown Arts District made a statement on behalf of staff and board of directors, saying the organization is committed to listening and doing. Access is committed to listening to BIPOC in the creative community while developing new strategies of how local arts organizations can do things better. While many victims like our venues are similar to CityArts, we consider to be a safe space and accessible for all artists, and especially for our friends of all diversities and backgrounds. So we want everyone to participate. It is clear that much more work needs to be done to build equity in the art world. Tonight, Access opened with a beautiful performance by Olyvya Kelly, who sang "Open My Heart" by Yolanda Adams. Olyvya was born into a musical family. Her parents are both musicians, and they toured all throughout her childhood with their own singing group, Stone Love. Olyvya earned a bachelor's degree in music and a minor in psychology at the Florida Memorial University in Miami. In addition to headlining 2 corporate bands, Olyvya is also a resident artist in Maitland, Florida, and does perform quite often at Maitland, Florida's jazz tastings. Thank you so much, Olyvya, for your performance this evening. It was truly beautiful. Now, Access could not have been provided without the generous, hi everyone. I don't know if there's technical glitch. As I was saying, Access could not have happened without the generous sponsorships of folks like Sanders Collective and our board member, Tiffany Sanders, the City of Orlando, United Arts of Central Florida, Orange County Arts and Cultural Affairs, the Downtown Development Board, the State of Florida Division of Cultural Affairs, and Remixed. Also, we want to give a great big thank you to Blue Bailey, who helped us to coordinate this evening's special performances. If you would like to learn more about the participating panelists and the moderator, all of the performers, please visit downtownartsdistrict.com//access. Now, I'm pleased to introduce you to our moderator for this special discussion. Julian C. Chambliss is a professor of English with an appointment in history and Val Berryman Curator of History at the MSU Museum at Michigan State University. In addition, He is a core participant in the MSU College of Arts and Letters Consortium for Critical Diversity in a Digital Age Research. He is a former professor at Rollins College and one of the curators of the 2017 Art in Odd Places Noise. We are so happy to have him working here with us. Thank you for joining us this evening. Hi, Julian, are you there? Oh, you gotta unmute yourself. Hello.
The life of Zoom. Thanks, Barbara, for that great introduction. And thanks, of course, to the Downtown Arts District for inviting me back. Even though I've left Central Florida, they keep pulling me back in. And I appreciate that. Appreciate the love. It's my great honor to serve as moderator for this event. And the key to being a great moderator is to make sure that you get out of the way and let the panelists talk. So it's my great honor to talk to sort of introduce our panelists for tonight. Sorcha Baty is an independent curator living in Orlando, Florida. Dr. Gisela Carbonell is a curator of Cornell Fine Arts Museum at Rollins College. Zoraye Cyrus is a multidisciplinary studio artist, and Peterson J Guerrier is a visual fine artist with a focus on figure painting, and Kalup Linzy is an American video and performance artist. So I want to thank all of them for participating in this panel. And our format, of course, is a little bit tight. We have a big panel, so we have a series of questions that each panelist will sort of focus on, and then we'll have a little bit of feedback from the rest of the panel. And then once we get through that series of questions, we'll have a little time for Q&A from the audience. So the first question, of course, goes to Peterson, and that question is a big one. So what are the inherent biases or barriers to entry for Black artists, administrators, and patrons of museum galleries?
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I just mute myself. All right. How's everybody doing? I mean, to dive right in, I guess I could only speak from what I don't know what's going on right now. I just went black. Am I good?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I can only speak from my perspective on some of the things that I've witnessed and how I've been part of within the art world, and whether I've done stuff here locally or outside and internationally. It's hard to be a Black artist without having the label of being called urban, or being called saying that you are that the art that you do is Black art, because depending on the setting, Black art could be somewhat of a racial slur. You feel what I'm saying? So to me, it's been really, really hard trying to figure out the direction that I want to go, because as soon as you make it to a certain level, the galleries that, okay, first of all, let me just say it like this. They want you to be Black. You know what I'm saying? They welcome the Blackness, but however, you are not allowed to create anything that reflects as a Black person. Because the minute you do it, you are being offensive. You are shaking the world that they're part of. So that's been something that in my experience and within my gallery world and within just me creating, had me basically going back and forth trying to figure out who I am as an artist. Because the thing is, I wanted to, obviously we want to make the sales, we want people to know who we are, but it got to a point where it really started bugging me, and then the work that I was doing wasn't really sitting well with my spirit, with who I am as an artist. Because I mean, multiple times I've been told that I'll purchase his work the minute he stopped being political. And political is my standpoint as far as my world and how I see the world and how the world sees me. But to some people, it's being political. So it took a minute for me to actually understand myself and who I wanted to be as an artist, and again, I was very fortunate to have a community behind me that allowed me to create the work that I wanted to create. But outside that community, you are pigeon-toed. You are basically put in a box to create things that are pretty. Meanwhile, the things that I will create that will be deemed offensive, I've seen my counterparts, my peers create, and that is welcome because they are not this. So the minute you are anything else, you are, I've had just recently, actually, I had to defend a couple of my pieces in one of the shows that I was doing, and I had to explain why I was doing. Meanwhile, the show that was there previous to mine, had something probably more offensive than the piece that I had. But, me putting it is basically me trying to start a revolution where it's like, nah, it's just, you're reading too much into it. Like, it's really surface, but, the minute you're Black, your whole entire, everything comes into question. So, I mean, the thing is, there's barriers everywhere, and those barriers really has to do with who you want to be and how you want to be seen. Because if you want to be a commercial artist, in which, again, I do commercial work for, because we got to pay the bills. But if you want to be mainstream, you cannot be mainstream and at the same time be a what are the word they use now? Woke. Because the thing is, the minute you become that, you offend a lot of people. So my barriers has been where, again, it's whatever you creating, don't create that, because what you creating will offend the people that's coming in. So therefore you need to create something that's pretty. And I mean, but at the same time, it's also been just fighting the label of, Peterson is a Black artist, or Peterson creates Black art, or you an urban artist, because my again, just like everybody else, I was trained this is something that I've always wanted to do, and I made sure that I went to school for it. But like my peers, that's not Black, I am an urban artist and I'm a Black artist versus, well, I mean, I'm proud to be Black, but my art is Black art. It's not anything else. No matter what the subject matter that I create, it's still considered urban or Black art, where I'm like, but this person creates the same thing. Why wouldn't you consider that person art as urban art? So, I mean, it's I could go on and on about this. It's just, there's been a lot of ways that I had to personally, within the last year, figure out what I wanted to say, because what I wanted to say was, again, when I first started, I was speaking my mind, and then it got to a point where I wanted to be at certain galleries, and those galleries didn't want certain work that I was creating, because I was starting out. So I actually bend myself to those galleries' will to be able to be part of those shows, to be part of the environment. But that environment wasn't really conducive to myself, to my well-being, to who I wanted to be as an artist. And that somewhat became an issue here and there. But, it's always me that have to defend my work, where other people don't have to defend what they have. And I've seen artists basically replicate my work.
I wanna keep in mind with the time. So
Right.
That perspective, and I want to give the panelists a moment to sort of reflect on some of your comments.
Right.
Is there anybody who wants to sort of follow up on Peterson's perspective a little bit in terms of like this question of the positionality being offered to artists of color in the art world, and some of the sort of like challenges represented by that, and this sort of expectation around a certain kind of narrative, which I think we all recognize is one of the things that defines modern art at some level. I think it makes a good point. Of course, I think we'll have a chance to sort of revisit that at some basic level. If I don't see any hands, I think Peterson, you crushed people's ability to like respond. You said it all.
We got a hand.
Oh, wait. Okay, we got a hand.
Hey, Peterson, it's Zoraye.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. So I can actually speak to that kind of relevance of feeling like you have to, of like the label of being a Black artist. And I wasn't really thinking about it until you started talking about it. And I just recently graduated 2019 from UCF. And I do remember this, this particular professor was just like, oh, well, you should make this piece about like lynching and this and that. And I was just like, because I showed him I did a piece about George Stinney Jr. and he was like, that's so compelling, that's amazing, like go in that direction. And I tried to go in that direction. I was just like, I don't want to. Like, this is a very serious and draining topic that I don't like. I did the George Stinney Jr. piece like out of like pure passion and like I was ready for it. But at that point, it felt like I was making like torture porn just to please somebody's imagery of what they want to see. And I was just like, that's not it. And I just completely fell back and I was like, I'm gonna do something else instead. So yeah, I know that feeling.
Right. I mean, I completely. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I go?
Well,
Can I go?
now we're gonna stick to the time, but remember, keep in mind, both for the panelists and for the audience, if you have questions or ideas you want to follow up on, we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. So I know this is a vital conversation. I do feel it, but we will get back to it. I don't want us to lose our schedule because there's a very hard timeline here. So we make sure that we get to all these issues that are so important. And to keep that in mind, the next question up is for Kalup. Kalup, of course, is a very successful artist. And this question, I think, speaks to some of the things that Peterson mentioned. So Kalup, can you provide both a positive and a negative professional experience related to access in the art world?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I would start off with my positive experience. Like for me, I sort of broke into the art world, I feel like unexpectedly. In graduate school, I applied to Skowhegan, which is this residency up in Maine. And I went there in 2002. And that year, the demographic at the residency was 50% New York and 50% elsewhere, other places in the world. And so being there that summer, because there are so many people from New York, that created a pathway for me to move to New York 2 years later, or a year later. So in 2003, I moved to New York. I had been passing my thesis video and some of my early grad school work around to people on a VHS tape. And I was hanging out with people in New York, but like I so happened to pass this tape off to Pascal Spingerman, who was going to be my future dealer, which I didn't know at the time. His best friend was at Skowhegan, and so yeah, a few years later, I was hanging out at their gallery, and it was like, well, we want to put you in a show. We don't know what's going to happen, or but we want to put you in a project show. And so they gave me a project space, and I had also been giving my tapes and my work to the Studio Museum in Harlem. And yeah, the end of 2004, like both of these shows went up. And then in 2005, I'll never forget, it was Good Friday, the Friday before Easter. And my cell phone rang, and it was my friend, Susanna Vapnik, saying, oh my gosh, you're never gonna believe what just happened. I was like, what just happened? And she said, you got a review in the New York Times. And it started off with "A Star Is Born." And I was like, what? And it's like, yeah. And so they gave me this rave review, and like I had like zero idea that was gonna happen. And so from there on, I just kept making the work. I kept applying to things. I got into this residency called Marie Walsh Shard, which is now the Shard Willentis in New York. I got that. I got the Tiffany Lewis Comfort Grant. I think that was like 2005 to 2006. And I was told that Cindy Sherman was into my work. And later on, she purchased my work and became a friend of mine. And I know her. Then I got the Guggenheim in 2007, and people were like, how did you get the Guggenheim? And I was like, I just applied, and I had got 4 recommendations, and so, but I want to say that there was always this issue of like, can I sustain myself making video and performance art? And so my work has never been big on the market. as big as some of the other like Black artists, but I've been able to fund my work through grants and fellowships and artist residencies. And so that becomes a big part of my presence. And then I was given a lecture at Columbia University, and James Franco was in the audience that day. And then he invited me to be on General Hospital with him. So I ended up on General Hospital just by giving a talk, basically. And so, and because I've had like all of these successes, it doesn't mean that negative things haven't happened. And I also have to be careful not to sound like I'm complaining, but at the same time, all of this great stuff was happening. And I was getting all this press and doing film festivals. And I remember starting out, I applied to a film festival with this same video, All My Children, Conversation with the Children. And I applied to a Black film festival. And I got a rejection letter, and the director wrote on there, like, we're not gonna even touch it. And so my like first rejection was like from a Black film festival, like one of my first major rejections. So that kind of did something to me, but at the same time, the Studio Museum in Harlem embraced the work. And so that's one thing that we should also realize, that Black people aren't all monolithic and we don't all have the same perspective. And but years later, I was able to do Sundance and again, Lesbian Film Festival in London. So that kind of healed that my relationship with the film festival circuit. But I did have, even like, so when I got the Marie Walsh Sharp, when I got that residency, I remember we had open studios, and this lady, she was white, and she came and sat down in my studio with her knitting and her cloth or something she was working on. And she was just like sitting in my studio, like starting to knit. And I was like, why is this lady sitting over here? And then she basically sat there and told me to say, oh, you stick out like a sore thumb. And I could not figure out if she was talking about, you know, just my body of work, being a video performance artist. Was it because I was queer? Was it because I was Black? Like I couldn't conclude what she was talking about. But I couldn't believe she had the nerve to come sit in my studio and say that. And so I kind of stared her down, and then she then she went away. And so that was like a weird incident. I remember a couple of years ago, I was out and about in the art world, and she's like a curator. I didn't know her that well, but she knew my work, and she worked at this museum, and a collector had purchased my work and gifted it to this museum. And she basically told me, she said she ended up leaving the museum because of their politics, but she told me some man, I think it was some powerful person in their area involved in the museum, complained about my work, and they turned my video off for the rest of the exhibition. And I could not, and I was just like, wow. And she was like, yeah, and she was like, I don't remember her name, and I'm not gonna say where I saw her because I don't want to like put her out there, but I'm sure she would have no issue like, backing me up on that. And so that was like, wow. And so, but I remember years earlier, I was in a show in Australia, a group show, and the curator visited us in New York, like during the run of the exhibition. And she was like, this one man was so upset, he was a white man, with my video KK Queen Survey, that he kicked the wall. And of course, we giggled about it, but she actually was someone that had my back, yeah. And so I mean, there are like other things to me that I've had like other, like sometimes negative experiences, but I kind of like flip it off my back, and then sometimes I just go in for the battle. You know what I mean? Like, it just depending, if it's a battle I think I can like win, but I don't like go up against situations I don't think I don't have no winning chance. And so, but I think I have survived because there have been institutions that have been behind me, and I've been able to get grants. And like right now I'm in the Tulsa Artist Fellowship, and I was a couple of weeks ago, like a month ago, I was invited. It was during the quarantine because one of my performances is postponed, and they invited me to take over their Instagram. And so Justice Shore, it was I was assuming he was a white man. He was a male. I think he was white, but he told the museum like he wanted to cancel his membership because they let me take over the Instagram. And again, I couldn't figure out if it was because I was queer or if it was because I was Black. And I was like, okay, it's Gay Pride Month. It's so like what, like I couldn't figure out. And of course, what the museum was like, well, we'll gladly process it for you as quick as possible. And so again, they had my back. So I feel like it was just that one time when an institution haven't had my back. But I want to also say that there are times when an institution is showing your work and there can be people in there advocating for you, but also people in there pushing back against you. So you can have conflict in one institution about the same artist. And that has happened as well. So, but lucky for me, I've had the people that advocated for me to push me through. So that, and it was something else.
Good place for us to pause, because both in terms of your answer and Peterson's answer, there's a question here about the individual's activity versus institutions. And so our next question is for Gisela, and that's specifically about institutions, right? So Gisela, in your opinion, what measures can be taken to create a more inclusive environment for Black artists and art administration? And I think this is what I touch on some of these questions that Caleb has mentioned in terms of the question of how institutions are positioning Black artists, but also loop in some of these perspectives being offered by Peterson in a sense of like, there's a position, a space carved out for Blackness in the art world. And what if you want to operate outside that space? What are the struggles? And really that comes down to leadership, right? It comes down to infrastructure. So if you can talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this panel. I am thrilled to be with such an amazing group of people and having this dialogue and learning. I work as a curator. I'm the curator at the Cornell Fine Arts Museum at Rollins College, and I'm an art historian. And it just, hearing Peterson and Kalup talk about your experiences and Zoraye, it just makes me think about what are some of the changes, that it's challenging, but we have to commit to do it as curators and people who work in the museum field and galleries as well. And one of the things that we really need to change, and it has been changing in the last few years, but there's a lot more work to do, as you were mentioning, Julian, is really thinking about what does leadership in museums look like, right? And I'm not just talking about having curators of color. I'm talking about having people on boards, people on collections committees, on exhibition committees, but also in other parts of the museum administration, in advancement, in outreach, in marketing, to really have a more diverse perspective and more of an open platform for artists of color to be part of the programming and part of the conversation and also part of the decision-making process. Because one of the things that I think we have a lot of work to do in the area of decision-making, right? As curators, of course, we want to have diverse artists. We want to have artists from different parts of the world. We want to have artists who bring different perspectives. And then sometimes we try to impose our own narratives as curators to the works that they create and bring to the table. So one of the things that I try to keep in mind as I'm working with artists is that it's a collaborative process, right? That it's a partnership. I'm not asking for their work so that I can tell the story I want to tell, but that as a curator, I ask artists to partner with me, to be a team for a few months and say, okay, show me what you're creating. Let's see what story we can tell. And as the museum person, I'll work on that side, but honoring your creation, your story, your voice, right? And I try to do that even in terms of how do we pick a title for an exhibition, right? Because it's your work that's going to be shown. So your imprint has to be there in the decision-making process, not just in the paintings or in the sculptures or whatever piece we're showing in an exhibition. The other thing that I would say is that we as museum professionals, we have to keep ourselves in check. We can't wait or expect that it's the artists of color who are going to keep us in check. We have to keep ourselves in check. And it can be as simple as, you know, look at the checklist of the last 10 exhibitions that you have done and see how many artists of color have you included. You know, what is that percentage? And sometimes we'll be surprised when we think that we're being very open and providing platforms and opportunities for artists, and that might not be the case. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is how important it is to support artists of color, whether their work is about race or not, right? And I think that goes back to what Zoraye was saying. As a Latina, of course, I'm thinking about Cuban artist Carmen Herrera, for instance, who creates abstract works that are not necessarily about the Cuban experience or about immigration. They are about abstraction, and that is as valid as any white artist who has created hard edge abstraction in their career. So I think going back to the earlier point, validating what the artist is bringing to the table and valuing that within the larger context of museum curation and organization, and really having that kind of partnership. You know, in Zoraye's case, you know, she was saying she moved away from creating a certain type of work, then that's fine. Then we can work with whatever you're creating so that you have a voice in that dialogue and in that platform. I'm working with an artist right now, Marcus Jansen, who creates paintings that are addressing issues like surveillance and economic inequality and hierarchies and the military-industrial complex, and these really big topics in very beautiful, gestural, colorful paintings. And that's opening in September at the Cornell, and I hope you can go see it. But that's an example of an artist who is looking at the macro, looking at these very big themes and tackling them. And then we have other exhibitions and other artists in the collection that who look at art making more in terms of activism, right? And whose work is more about the now in a way that it's much more geared toward making immediate change right now, right? So validating those different perspectives, that artists of color, like anyone else, is not a monolithic. The same thing happens with Latino or Puerto Rican artists, that not just because you share perhaps certain background or heritage doesn't mean that your artistic output is homogeneous. And as museum professionals and as curators, we have to keep ourselves in check and validate that diversity if we want to be true to this desire and this need for effecting change in the art world.
Right, I really appreciate that answer. And I want to remind people that, you know, Peterson, Kalup, Gisela, they're providing a perspective sort of grounded in their experiences, but speaking to wider issues. And of course, if you have questions for them, you can type that into the chat. We will see it, and we do have a Q&A session coming up, so we'll be able to follow up with them about these perspectives, about these incidents of experience in the art world that they're talking about, and get more in depth. But you know, our next question is for Sorcha. This is an opportunity for us to, again, follow up on the line of inquiry and reflection that's being offered up by our panelists. Sorcha, you know, how can art institutions be more intentional about increasing Black audience participation? Because of course, one of the things that it's unspoken but really important is that there are Black people seeking something from this art, and what can we do to reach out for them? And this is a great question. Really look forward to hearing your answer for this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this panel with everybody that you guys collected together. I'm very happy to be here. So yes, reaching a Black artist, like, you know, not only being somebody who has put together shows, but somebody who has attended her fair amount of shows. I think the first approach is going to be just the way that you introduce yourself to the Black community, right? So Black people, we have basically established a vernacular amongst ourselves within our community. Sometimes it's verbal, sometimes it's nonverbal. It's something that, you know, you're able to see another Black person in the room and be able to engage with them. As a culture, I feel like we've kind of layered this method of communicating in the way that we just establish a sense of familiarity, establish a sense of safety. When we're being asked to participate, I think we're looking to see those same type of verbal or nonverbal undertones in the message. If those are present, then I think it's definitely going to impact the message that is received to a Black audience. I think it's important for institutions to consult with Black people, like Gisela said, when it comes to the marketing of campaigns. I think it's going to be important in reaching a Black audience. You know, those people that you bring into these creative processes, they're going to have a lifeline directly to the community that you're looking to bring into your institution. So if an institution does it effectively, I feel that, you know, a Black audience is going to be able to get behind a mission of an institution if they can see that it clearly taps into the social causes that's behind what the Black community is interested in. Second, I think you really have to just do the work. You have to do the research. I mean, you know their economic background. Like, do you know if we have a low income households that are close to this institution that you're looking to attract? Like, I know a lot of museums, institutions have free days, whether that be a day of the week, whether that be the weekend, but how does that impact the community? Like, are they going to be able to participate because of, you know, extracurriculars or sporting events that they might have? Do they have other points of access to your institution? Do you have online free programming that they can get involved with? And also, one of the things kind of tying back into the approach, the language that you use when you're talking to a Black audience, look at the verbiage that a lot of institutions use when they're talking about artwork and they're talking about their programming. Is it actually geared towards the community that you're looking to bring in, or is it more geared to the art world? You know, there is this privilege that's associated within the art world, regardless of somebody's race, right? So is your institution even capable of creating these spaces where a Black audience will feel welcomed? You know, making sure that that mission connects to a Black audience is really going to reinforce the institution's involvement in their lives. And I think, truthfully, like, the last and probably most important point that I want to make is demonstrating authenticity. I feel like Black people and people of color have historically seen pieces of their identity, of their culture, kind of stripped away from them and then rebranded, regurgitated, and then presented back to them. And they're expected to show up and to be grateful and to be thankful and to somehow feel empowered. I feel that a lot of companies, institutions, they go hard in February, right? But the remaining 11 months out of the year, they're not concerned if a Black audience is showing up to their shows. So I think the truth of the matter is, when something happens within the Black community, the Black Lives Matter movement happens, and you see companies and institutions slap up Black artists or slap up Black curators on their social media platforms or their websites or banners on their building, there's something that falls short in that effort. It doesn't seem authentic in any way. You know, as just a side note, the tragedy that happened to George Floyd, it was an impact on the society and a movement. The Black Lives Matter movement got like a resurgence. But the Black Lives Matter movement really started after the murder of Trayvon Martin, which happened right here in Central Florida. But that type of action, and this is literally just a personal reflection of my own, when I see that type of action after a tragedy or an event like that happens, like, to me, I find it hard to balance the message that you're trying to get across as an institution with you somehow benefiting from our struggle as a people. And it just falls to me as a way that you're reflecting your wokeness, because again, you're grabbing a Black curator to put together a show, you're grabbing a Black artist to put on your social media. I believe that it becomes the responsibility of an institution when something like what happened in our society happens, to connect to the Black audience, to make sure that the needs of the Black community is woven through the institution's mission, so that you can establish a basis of trust. You can establish a safe space so that you can have Black people show up consistently. Because you put together a Black show, yes, most Black people will show up because Black people love to see themselves reflected in a way that empowers them, that shows them in a respectful way, but not as an attraction that you see every February out of the year. So I think to find your audience, if you are just genuine in your content, your audience will find you.
Thank you. I really love that answer. Again, I want to remind people that they have opportunity to offer questions to the panelists through the chat function. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but we're going to take advantage of that during the Q&A to sort of allow us to sort of follow up and have a more open discussion amongst ourselves as we sort through the questions. So our final question on the list is for Zoraye. And this is actually a question that follows up, I think, on the idea that is sort of being articulated here. What's the role, what are the different roles of Black artists in this particular moment, especially when the politics of representation seem to be sort of driving institutions to do more? And some of these questions and some of the reflections offered up by Peterson and Caleb, I think, also sort of speak to this same set of concerns. So Zoraye, how would you answer that question?
Hey, so that question is like very heavily loaded. It's a lot to think about, and I had a long, hard time trying to figure out like what exactly does that mean for myself, my peers, people I look up to. And I kind of come to the conclusion that like not our whole purpose, but one of our roles can be is being the voice of awareness. We don't necessarily have to talk to our exact pain. We don't necessarily have to talk about every single Black person that has passed, but we can allowed to just speak of ourselves and speak of our experiences. We are no longer pigeonholed to just talk about like this pain and suffering. But if we want to, we can. You know, some people are able to do that. A lot of people, they don't know how to convey their emotions or find the words to describe what this kind of feeling is, to constantly be looking at the media, constantly look at the news and seeing your people just dying every day and you can't do anything about it. And like, I know for myself, when George Floyd was happening and the Black Lives Matter protest was happening, I, as an artist, I completely checked out. Like, I couldn't make any work because I couldn't fathom it. Like, I was just so angry that I couldn't make anything. And some people are able to do things. An artist named Jamie Holmes, he had an aerial demonstration where he had like, like those planes that fly around with banners at the top of them. He had ones that had quotes from George Floyd before he passed away. Things we heard like, "I can't breathe," or "You're going to kill me," flying over New York City, Manhattan, flying over Miami, flying over Houston. And that's what's so great about having a plethora of Black artists, is that there's no pressure from one artist for all of us to be like, we all have to say something, because not all of us are going to be like that. We don't owe anybody our agonizing pain. Like, it's like picking at a scab that hasn't been healing at all. Like I don't owe any institution, I don't owe any people to constantly be making these works about police brutality, about systemic racism. But because I don't have that pressure, other artists who can, they can do so. And also not to focus on like not feeling guilty about it. I felt guilty about like not making an art piece about George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, but I was just like, it would seem forced because I'm not ready to do that. And Njideka Crosby, who's like a MacArthur Genius Grant Award recipient, she was on like a Zoom call too, and she said she hasn't made anything because she can't. And I was just like, well, if someone like her is saying that she can't find herself to make any artwork, then I shouldn't feel any pressure to do so either, you know? And it is, though, for those who do want to go down that avenue to talk about the exact issues of police brutality and stuff like that, we do have to be careful about how we talk about it and how we approach it, because even though these are symbols of people that we've seen and we see them and we see ourselves, we see our brothers, we see our sisters, we see our parents, for other people, those are actual people they live with. Like George Floyd was an actual father with an actual child, with actual parents, with an actual fiance. Same thing with Tamir Rice, same thing with Trayvon Martin. These people have lost a person that they've had their entire lives. And for us to use their imagery, we have to be careful about how we use it. Because I know I was looking up Sean Leonardo, who's also a great artist. He has these images of people who have died by police officers, but like erasing certain aspects of the image away. And just recently, a show he was going to have in Cleveland kind of got canceled or postponed because Tamir Rice's mother found out about it and she was not okay with the imagery of him at all. But that was something he made back in like 2018. And it's been 2 years later, but like she herself is saying that she's not okay with it because that's her son. And even though it means something to you, because how can none of us connect to a 12-year-old who just got murdered in public for no reason, for playing around with a fake gun? How can we not connect with that? But to her, that's an entire different person. So a part of our voice in this moment is to keep creating what we want to create without any pressure to talk about it. But if we do decide to talk about it, we have to be careful about how we address the situation.
Thank you. I think it was really powerful. I thank all of you for working your way through those questions. We do have some time for Q&A from the audience. And we've got some questions, and I think some of these questions really speak to some of the reflections that you've offered up in terms of your experience, both as artists, but also people who think about art institutions. So one question, which I think is actually probably pretty common for a lot of people, is what advice would you give to a white artist or a white administrator who wants to bring more diversity into the process of their institution, wants to deal with some of these questions and faces a question of cultural appropriation or beginning on a bandwagon associated with these moments? What's the practice that makes the most sense from your perspective on trying to address these things? And I'm sort of throwing this open to everyone and mindful of some of the things that you said, in the sense that, for instance, Kalup has been successful with institutions and really operates, I'm characterizing here, as an artist who's connecting to institutions, big institutions that are supporting a very particular kind of art. Whereas Peterson, I think, reflects a narrative about someone who's in the art market and dealing with some of the questions around being controlled by that market, for lack of a better word. And again, those are my words, not necessarily his words. But this question of representation, this question of the role of white allies and white institutions, what can they do and how can they do it in a way that's practical from your perspective? Anyone can answer that.
Well, I think one way is to be in like conversation with the artist and like really understand where the artist is coming from and understanding different perspectives. One thing that when working with institutions, they have always asked me what was it that I was interested in talking about and interested in sharing, and so we sort of go back and forth with that. So, but there have been times when I have felt like every now and then a curator, somebody doesn't understand me or my work on a deeper level. Sometimes I felt that way, but for the majority of the time, it is a conversation and a discourse, and sort of like an openness. Like I also have to be open that not everybody that comes through the museum or the institution can receive what I'm offering right away. And so I have to put myself in a space where, where I'm just open to those sort of responses and feedback.
Thank you. Gisela.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that, going back to a point I made earlier, that it's really about creating a partnership. Even when the artists, I've worked with artists in the past who have said, oh, here are my works, you do whatever you want with them. It's your exhibition, run with it. Still, there is a responsibility as a curator, as an art institution to involve that artist in whatever way works for them, but their voice needs to be there, right? And even in those moments where it's like, sure, here's the work, you do whatever you want, is what you were saying, Kalup, is really trying to understand what the work is about, what is it that you want to say, how does that fit in with that institution and that public and that demographic, right? And how to make it work in a way that is true to the artist and his or her creation.
Sorcha?
Yeah, and just to add on to that point that everybody, that Kalup and Gisela was speaking, I know when I was putting together my first show at my gallery, I brought in the artists that I was representing, and at every moment, like from them walking the show before it opened to seeing the marketing that we put together, I wanted to make sure that every step of the way that they were involved in the process, to make sure that they were being represented in a way that they felt true to who they were, and that they were not getting lost in the big idea of like the exhibit. Like I didn't want the show to be bigger than who they were so that their message got lost in that. And I think, to speak to an artist interacting with either a gallery or an institution, ask those questions if you don't feel that you feel 100% comfortable in the process, you don't feel like the curator and you are really clicking and connecting. Ask to be involved in those steps and those conversations when it comes to the way that you're being marketed, because yes, you don't have any control of an audience looking on your work. They may not connect with it, but you do have a voice when it comes to how you're being represented. That's your brand. So, ask those questions, even if they tell you like, no, we have this, that's going to tell you a lot more about any type of follow-up that you have with that institution and any references that you can give your artist, your fellow artists to that institution.
And I'm sorry, can I speak?
No, go ahead.
Because of social media, we have gotten to a point where artists used to be able to get with galleries to create a body of work that actually speaks, that touch on certain subjects. But social media have actually changed the whole way that we interact with this. And galleries now are looking into artists to bring patron versus artists looking for the gallery to do the opposite. You feel what I'm saying? So now it's almost as if, because of social media, because of the following, because of whatever, galleries will only approach artists that actually have a certain amount of followings to galleries. So no matter how talented you are, you don't really get in, because if your following is 200 people, meanwhile you might have 200 faithful followers versus 20,000 followers, galleries only go after the 20,000 followers. And that's something that I've actually really been paying attention to over the years, that your talent doesn't speak for anything anymore. So, and again, not to keep on preaching on this, and then you throwing ethnicity on top of it, you really get down to nothing unless you have some kind of social media following. So, I mean, I just want to throw that in there.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think that this is an important question. We did have a question about this question of the market. And I think at some level, Peterson is talking about this, and we're all sort of like referencing this. You know, the question is, do we expect a surge in the art market for Black art because of this moment? And I think the answer, I can give my own personal answer. The answer is yeah, like it's all Black all the time right now. The question is how long that gonna last.
It's just like, sorry.
But I do want to ask, you know, what is the role of a popular art market versus a sort of institutional art market, and what can we do as an artist? What can you do to sort of take advantage of these different pathways? Because at some level, if you listen to how you also describe the art world, you've articulated some very distinct pathways, and each one of them has opportunities and pitfalls associated with it, right? And so the question about the art market really is, for a lot of people, for the Black community, what do we know of the art market? It's institutionally this, it projects a very whiteness to it. But at the same time, we're here trying to think about how we can get more people of color involved. So what should we think about as in terms of the art market, as artists who are working in the market, administrators who are in a position? What do we need to do in terms of like transforming that art market, educating different audience about that art market? What can we do in that space around these questions, if anything?
I believe you touch on it, like within your question, and anybody could, chime in. I think is education, because I grew up, my family is from the island, they don't have many, they're not educated when it comes to the art world. And growing up, I was the black sheep of the black sheep of the family, because I wanted to do art and nobody understood why I wanted to do art. But the thing is, it's a lack of education. And I could also speak to my, how can I point this? Like my self-value when it comes to the art world. I can count from like one hand how many Black people have actually purchased my work and appreciate my work without them depicting every little details and trying to understand. And again, I'm fine to explain what my work stands for. However, there's a lack of education within the Black culture that most, and it's not even the art, it's with politics, it's with everything else. There's a lack of education. So unless we start educating, we're not going to have Black collectors. We may have some Black collectors because they made some money and they know something, but the everyday person is not going to come in and buy a $3,000 piece because they don't know the value of a $3,000 piece. No matter how, grand that you might be in the art world, to them is like, why am I going to spend $300 or $3,000 on a painting? Where, again, a lack of education. Until we start educating, until we start breaking those barriers, and again, it's not just art, it's politics, it's everything. Unless we actually start educating, it's not going to move on. It's not going to move forward, because 10 years from now, if the people that lives, we all live in Orlando, or with the exception of a few, the people in Primrose, they don't know what's happening right now. They don't know that Third Thursday happens. And I'm fortunate enough, again, to have my studio downtown. And you know how many people come into the studio and I'm like, hey, every month on Third Thursday, we do art. It was like, what? I didn't know art existed in Orlando. And that goes through, like, not just Black people, just everybody. They're not even aware there's a gallery in the midst of everything that's happening right now. So educating the masses will probably break those barriers. But until we could really educate and really get them to like notice what's happening, it's basically speaking into like an empty room. Your voice is just echoing everywhere. Sorry. Anyways.
Caleb, Kayla has something.
So so I think that's where we come in with a generational thing, because like back when I was coming along, like we didn't, when I was emerging in the art world. So Peterson, how old are you? I'm just curious.
Seriously, man.
Yeah. No, I'm serious.
I'm 36, about to be 37.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm not that much older than you, but I do remember back when I was emerging, like YouTube emerged.
Right.
And I would put videos on, like clips of my videos on YouTube to send to curators and writers in my own network. But then with the algorithm, it started getting like all of these other hits. And so I never really kept up with social media like people suggested I should, because I just did not I didn't always know what to do with it, because my work was already being collected by collectors who collected video and art, and by institutions. So I didn't want to mess with that too much. Although I found out later that most of my collectors don't really care. But I do want to talk about the social media thing and having all those followers, because like all of that hype, and that it doesn't necessarily translate into sales.
Right.
No, it's fine. But I also realized early on in my career that a lot of the reason why I was getting so many museum shows and with all these institutions is because the collectors who was collecting my work was actually on the boards of those museums. So they want the artists that they're collecting to be in shows. I'm not saying that every artist that is in a museum show is in the board members' collection, but that played a huge role. So when I'm teaching my students and talking to my students, I always tell them, pay attention to who names are on the wall and who the donors are, because those people, in terms of the collectors, are having influence on who gets on the institution. And I also realized early on, with all of those articles, and I have all those people come to my art galleries, and I'll do a performance and it's packed. I'll get paid, but most of the people in the art world, a big chunk of them, want the experience for free. So a lot of times for income, I was depending on the education department and those few collectors that were collecting my work and gifting it to the museum, or some patron would donate money to their purchase fund so they can, purchase the work from the artist. And so again, even though I perform for 200 or 300 people, all of those people are not going to purchase my work. And so as a performance artist, that's something I've had to accept. And again, I had to accept that a lot of people in the art world want the experience for free. Why? Because you can go to an art gallery and you can look at the work and have that experience. And no, you can't take it home, but then that's when you want the people with the deep pockets to come in and purchase it and either take it home with them or gift it to an institution.
Can I ask a question?
And also, one more thing, and also institutions are more likely to buy the political charge work because it gives it a context, a historical context, versus private collectors a lot of times.
Can I ask one quick question? I'm not trying to bogart the whole entire time.
Nope. Hold on a second. We haven't had anybody else that had a chance to talk. So we're going to moderate. Zelda, Sorcha, Zoraye. Zoraye, okay.
I was gonna say real quick for Caleb's thing, right before I graduated, a curator from New York came in, and she hooked up her laptop to the monitor, and she pulled up everybody's Instagram, and she was dissecting the hell out of it. And she was like, I don't want to see pictures of you drinking. I don't want to see pictures of you hanging out with your friends. This is how curators are looking for artists now. We're no longer, whatever we used to do, we're not really doing it anymore. We are first looking at your Instagram page to see all of your work. Now, I'm not sure if the whole follower count thing still plays an effect, but that's essentially how they're looking at us right now. It's now a new form of business. It's really strange. I tried even getting on TikTok and I was like, this ain't it. I don't like this. This is weird. That's it.
Okay. Georgia.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk to a couple of points. So yes, social media definitely has an impact. you know, curators, that's how a lot of galleries do find their artists, is through just curators, through their followers, through basically getting a glimpse into your brand, your identity, your audience, your followers, because like Peterson said, it's going to be an influx of audience to your establishment. So you're going to want to not only establish your gallery or your institution to this artist, but hopefully it's a little bit more reciprocal so that both parties kind of benefit from that. I also agree that education is huge. When it comes to, again, the community, Orlando being a part of it, because it's so segmented and you have all of these different kind of poles of attention here in Central Florida, yeah, it does get a little, I guess, muddled or kind of not seen in the types of art outlets that are available to people here in Central Florida. So I definitely think that there needs to be an educational component to just engaging people about what they have in their own backyard so that they don't feel like they need to travel to your Savannahs, your Atlantas to see artwork. You have amazing, talented artists that are right here. Education to your curators. And also as somebody who, you know, went to school, got a degree in art history, I think it needs to even start like in a level like that, where you highlight and you focus more on Black art and the importance of it, because you go through countless courses talking about, you know, art in the Italian Renaissance and the art that kind of, you know, takes up the many different rooms that are involved in the Louvre, but you won't see a lot of Black people represented in that because we were still living in this culture and environment of racism as a Black culture. So kind of reinforcing the importance of Black art needs to start whenever you're pursuing your degree in art history, so that whenever you come out and you hopefully get a position at an institution or you open up your own gallery, it's already inherently built into your approach. And then for the people who are currently out there, like Kalup said, like, yeah, you have your donors, like you should have your curators and institutions, like you should be able to highlight the people of color that you have in your permanent collection or that you have as a traveling exhibit, and be able to promote the importance of them. And then also a kind of hurdle for a lot of, you know, Black owned galleries and, you know, people who are creating these spaces is the financial ability to get into like art fairs, for example. So, you know, being able to look at institutions who do have like considerable funding, seeing the opportunities for partnership and collaborations for maybe some of those Black owned galleries to get like some prime locations and like a Basel Art Fair at, you know, some of the more high profile venues is going to be like great steps forward in making sure that Black art is not only seen on a commercial, but also, you know, an institutional platform.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're on time. I think we have some more time for questions.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, listen, you get me going now. I'm gonna keep going. This question is for Gisela. I guess it's more of, so when you were speaking, I actually jotted some note down, but how do you classify an artist that's basically experimenting with different style and not really, I mean, they may know who they are as an artist, but they just want to keep on experimenting? Because what I've noticed in the art world is that if you are not a one note artist, that your art doesn't reflect, everything that you create is not the same, what you have, you are basically classified as you're all over the place. So as an art, and again, every artist in the world that's now a master, you have Dali, you have Da Vinci, they all have experiment throughout their whole entire life. But we are now in a place where if your work doesn't look exactly the same every time, you are not aware of who you are. So how do you classify, or how does, wait, hold on. I got my chicken scratch open here. How do you classify that artist for, I mean, if you were to think about that artist for a show, if you were looking at the work, how do you classify that person?
Well, why would you want to classify them, right? As someone who's working, trying to think about exhibitions and organize exhibitions, those classifications, it depends who you're asking that question. I think it also depends on the type of institution, and I can only speak from my experience in museums. The gallery world is a totally different context that it's definitely not my area, and maybe those taxonomies and those labels are perhaps more important to galleries when thinking about sales. I think for me, when I think about an artist, or when I look at a body of work, I'm trying to look at its historical value, right? How can it helps me tell a story? How can it helps me tell the story that represents a group of people, the experience of a group of people who have something in common, whether that's across centuries or across geographic locations, right? That's how I approach it. So in that example that you're saying, how do you classify someone who's trying different things and experimenting, and the examples that you provided, yeah, those were artists whose creative output is characterized by exploration and experimentation, right? And some of them with very long careers where you can even see decades, right? This decade they explored with this style, and the next decade with a different style. And I think that's okay. And then you also have to think about the different types of institutions, right? I work presently for an academic museum, and we have the luxury of exploring a lot of political issues and political themes because I work in a liberal arts college, right? So political art is not an issue for us, but I know there are other institutions out there where for different reasons, that's perhaps not a good fit for them, right? So I think for the artists also, in terms of thinking about what expectations to have in terms of how to get institutions interested in their works and how to get curators interested in their works. A curator may be interested in your work or anyone's work, but if they don't have the institutional support, it won't go anywhere. And institutional support, it's not exclusively money, it's support from leadership, is leadership and an administrative structure, recognizing and acknowledging the importance of showing that artist, or if including work in a group exhibition. It's not just the money, right? There's a lot more to it. So I think in the museum world, also, there are those differences, and sometimes they're subtle and sometimes they're very clearly identifiable.
So we had a couple of questions that I think might touch on some of the perspectives that you guys were offering in your conversation recently. One was about the fact that most artists, no matter their color, I think that's interesting, have to move to a larger city to make a living. And in particular, the questions about how do you get people who live in Central Florida but go to New York or LA or some bigger city to buy art? How do you get those people to engage in art here? And at some level, and engage with artists here in Central Florida. And so at some level, this goes to this question of these sort of institutional relationships, but also this question of education. And then a second question is, what would you wish that you knew? What would you like to have known earlier in your career? I mean, this question doesn't hit everyone at the same level, but what would you like to tell your younger self, basically? What would you like to know earlier in your career in terms of like moving forward, in terms of having a better impact? Like, so what are some tips that you might offer up for early career people? And so either one of those questions, if anybody wants to try to tackle them, we still have about 4 minutes to deal with questions.
Can I, real quick? I personally, I know I'm talking a whole lot. I personally think that classifying any artist, this is like worldwide, as local is a major downfall. Because the minute you classify somebody as local, you are taking all the accolades and everything that they have done away from them. And that's it. Anybody else can answer?
Sorcha.
Are we still on?
Nothing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You could go ahead. You can go ahead. Yeah,
I'll be short. I'll be short. I have nothing to add on to Peterson's comment. I'm more so looking at arts administrators, curators, just something that I wish I had or could tell my younger self would definitely be to not shrink myself to have a place in an industry that I love. I feel that, you know, because I grew up not really having a connection to art galleries or museums until I was in college, did I really see a place for myself. And then once I graduated and I was, you know, had my first job within a gallery, it was me again, kind of surrounded by mainly people who didn't look like me, white people. And so I felt that I needed to blend in or I would stick out. And I feel that, you know, if I could reflect and look back to my younger self, I would be like, no, don't shrink down what makes you unique in this art industry. And that is going to be that there are few, especially within Jacksonville, Florida, which is where I'm from, there were so few of us that were even represented. So I would definitely tell anybody who is pursuing a career in curation or arts administration, and you are a person of color, to don't feel like you have to shrink yourself or change any physical attributes about yourself that's going to put you in a position of power if you lean into who you are and what makes you unique and authentic.
Thank you so much. Someone gets the last comment.
To that question of what I would say to my younger self, and it's something that I would share with anyone who's, you know, trying to get out there, whether it's as a curator, as an artist, is two quick things. One, I would say to my younger self, don't wait until you are in the big city to do the important exhibition. Don't wait until you meet the famous artist to then do a project. Do it now and create with what you have in the context where you live. Create a thing and make it happen with what you have. And that will be your great thing, right? It doesn't have to be in New York City. It doesn't have to be in LA. It doesn't have to be wherever. It's where you are, because like I think Peterson was saying, and Sorcha, there's talent all around you, right? And those people know other people, and those artists know other artists that can connect you and know other curators, and you create your own network. And then the second and last quick thing that I would tell my younger self is something along the lines of what Sorcha said. Imposter syndrome is a terrible thing. And so remind yourself that, you know, you can do it, you are doing it. Find people who support what you do, and some people may support you financially, acquiring your work. Other people may support you with advice. Other people may support you by just being there and believing in you. And so that's what I would tell my younger self. You don't have to wait until you're a specialist in this and that to be able to do it. With the training you have, if you're not the specialist, reach out and look for the specialist and create the network and establish those relationships and create a thing where you are.
And that's a great way to end the Q&A. Our next moment here is going to be dedicated to a closing out, and I'm going to turn over to our master of ceremonies, the technical master of ceremonies, to set up our closing remarks. So there she is.
Hey, Thanks, Julian. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ha'ani Hogan. I'm the Development and Marketing Manager at Downtown Arts District. I've been behind the scenes, switching all the screens and monitoring all of our different platforms. So thank you so much for sticking around till the end of our show. As Barbara said in the beginning, we're going to continue this conversation for a while. This panel discussion is just the launch of a year's worth of educational programming. All of us at the Downtown Arts District are committed to listening to BIPOC creatives and doing what we can to ensure equity in the Central Florida art world. Thank you so much to Julian, Sorcha, Gisela, Zoraye, Peterson, and Kalup for this meaningful discussion. And of course, thank you so much to Olyvya for starting off our show so beautifully. So please stay connected with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We want to stay connected with everyone, and we love all the questions in all of the different chats. We just couldn't pack everything into an hour and a half time, but that makes me hopeful that we have a year's worth of program is going to be excellent for us. So we want you to join in on that conversation. But now I'm actually super honored to introduce our closing performer for this evening. But as of right now, she's joining in. So we'll wait till she joins in now, but I'll introduce her real quick. Ebony Stewart is an international touring poet and performance artist. Her work speaks to the Black experience with emphasis on gender, sexuality, womanhood, and race, with the hopes to be relatable, remove shame, heal minds, encourage dialogue, and inspire folks in marginalized communities. So just give me a minute. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ebony Stewart.
Hey, thanks so much, Cheyenne. I really appreciate that. So here's the thing. I identify as an artist, sometimes a curator. I'm also an educator, a community activist, but more than anything, I'm a horrible quitter. So that's like a really real thing. It's interesting, like the conversations that you all have been having has been really, really dope to witness. And I'm hoping that, or I'm glad that they're going to continue, right? I just want to do like a short poem for you all, and I can tell you the way I came to art was just strictly through just like being a person that didn't really necessarily know my voice yet, or I was hearing stories and I wanted to be a part of the narrative, and I was like, why am I not included? Which brings to mind a lot of different names that are brought up. So I just want to make sure to say some names and offer them to this space. Breonna Taylor, Pamela Turner, Corinne Gaines, Rakia Boyd, Sandra Bland. I want to make sure that we say those names because, you know, obviously Black women to me are everything and we getting wiped out too, yeah? So I'm gonna do this poem called Punk Noir, The Black Woman as Prophet. My art is always first and foremost including of myself. I would be silly not to, and I'm a Black woman, so this is for us. So me and all my badass walk into a bar, a club, a runway, or just any day, and I got my grunge turned up. Got an all Black everything, including my skin, but make no mistake, I look good in anything, cause all my amazing popped into Bantu, a bald, a mohawk, I'm so punk rock, I got dreads for the dreaded, sister curls on swirl, but underneath it all, my nature be natural, star-studded, spiked, and a boss bitch for anybody who wanna try me, I'm just saying. I'm so hardcore, I get to be a Black woman, moshing through this life, swimming through all this pain, even while restrained, I reclaim. Hold me down long enough and I'll figure out how to turn these chains into a crown, bust it down and make sure it fit a Black woman aesthetic. Magic be my heritage with an unabashed identity. Call me the middle passage guru, DIY queen, yes, honey. No matter if it be fashion, music, art, or this body, there ain't an idea you can have without me. Bush and tribe, the hive, the way we move and keep moving, non-conforming, proper and hood, it's a dichotomy, but you the only one that's confused. Made a way out of no way. Broke the glass, now the ceiling gone. You want to act like a Black woman didn't do it, haven't done it, and don't continue to school you. I made a subject out of myself. So even when they try to stop me, copy, or erase me, I reboot a futuristic somebody and still stay the same, touched and untouchable. Boxed and bothered, vibrant and unsettled, persistent, pierced, punk and resisting. I got all this power I can't use, made all these impressions, but somehow my bank account got reduced. My culture be endangered, because mainstream get to try on my attitude and steal my face and make all my Black women trendy without having to give a Black woman credit, but I showed up like I've been doing as the blueprint. Allow me to reintroduce myself to the anti-establishment, AKA Black women, been and always will be lit. My name is Ebony Stewart, y'all. Thank you so much.
Woo! Is that it? We're done? Nobody's talking?